I was a little worried there for a second. Pokémon Winds and Pokémon Waves! What? It's coming out next year? Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and yes, I was taken back by seeing the release year for Pokémon Winds and Waves. Like many, I expected these games would come out at the end of 2026. It was already going to be a longer wait than usual. Over the last few generations, the Galaxy Teen generations for Pokemon games were 3 years. Us waiting until the end of 2026 was going to be 4 years. But with the news of these games taking even longer, them coming out sometime in 2027, there are some huge implications there. And we talked about the implications for Pokemon itself in yesterday's trailer analysis, so you can check that out there, but spoiler, it's mostly very positive actually. I think this is going to give the games more time for polish. But there's a whole other angle here that's arguably an even larger talking point, because it could be involving several other Nintendo games beyond Pokemon. Because with Pokemon not being the holiday title, what will be the holiday title, or what will be the holiday titles? Certainly, Nintendo is going to have something, right? You would think they always have several holiday titles, so what are those going to be? With Pokemon not being there, it really has us wondering what they're going to put out. They have to put out something significant. Pokemon was going to be huge. It always is huge. But with that not there, Nintendo's going to need something dramatic, something comparable, if not even better. But then there's a whole other angle of Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out later this year. Some people think that because Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out, that's why there's no Pokemon, and that's why Nintendo might not really have much for the holidays, which I don't really agree with, but we're going to be tackling that topic here as well. But then there's something else to consider here. If there are indeed going to be multiple big holiday titles that Nintendo hasn't announced yet, when are they going to announce them? When is Nintendo going to talk about their first party offerings? A lot of us have been thinking it. Where is that general Nintendo Direct that tells us about what Nintendo has to offer beyond April? A lot of people very reasonably were thinking, well, with Nintendo not really telling us much about first party stuff, a lot of the focus is going to be placed on Pokemon, and they were going to tell us about what to expect for this year in terms of the big stuff. But if Pokemon's not coming out this year, not the big game, then what are they going to do? Well, that's what we're diving into today. Do you find yourself feeling tired, unable to take a good nap during the day from wherever you may be? Then perhaps you are in need of a soft, comfortable sleep mask that blocks out all light. Fortunately, Manta Sleep, the sponsor for today's video, has just that, a quality sleep mask. This sleep mask has super soft, comfy cushions that cover your eyes and block out all light. It's easy to adjust to different sizes, and it feels great to wear. And it's helped me personally fit in just a bit more rest during my days. So if you're looking to improve your sleep and energy, check out the Manta Sleep mask using the link in the description below with my code SLEEPRESTART. So let's first tackle this topic of Nintendo being scared of Grand Theft Auto. Firstly, Nintendo's never scared of anyone. They operate on their own sort of wavelength. They have the whole blue ocean strategy where they're not trying to directly compete with anyone else. They march to the beat of their own drum. Also, Nintendo's brand is so strong right now. If there's any company that shouldn't be afraid of a Grand Theft Auto release, it would be Nintendo. Not to mention, there's a really good chance that Grand Theft Auto is not coming to Switch 2, at least not initially. If it is, great. I think most people will agree that it's unlikely that Grand Theft Auto will be made available for Switch 2 day and date. It's possible, I actually think it's relatively likely, that it will eventually get ported over to Nintendo Switch 2, but a Switch 2 version coming out at the same time as others when this game has been in development for many years and dev kits have only gone out somewhat recently for Switch 2, it seems fairly unlikely, especially considering the history of Rockstar working with Nintendo. It's not that Rockstar doesn't work with Nintendo, but they're usually not the first there, or the second. They're usually pretty late to the party. So Nintendo's not just gonna wait around and let Grand Theft Auto come out on one day in late this year and then let all the holiday months pass by with their new console and not have any games to push that. That makes literally zero business sense. That's not what's going to happen. Now, could the timing of this significant Grand Theft Auto release impact what Nintendo decides to put in a particular month or in a particular week? I'm sure maybe there's some wiggle room there. I'm sure that Nintendo's analysts are likely thinking about the positioning of things, but I don't think it means that their biggest games that would help the Switch 2 sell, that would give them money for the holidays, the most lucrative time of the year, I don't think it has Nintendo thinking they should just ignore all of that. Again, doesn't make business sense. Also, historically speaking, Nintendo always puts out several holiday titles. Just this last year, Nintendo squeezed several titles into a very short span of time. Mario Galaxy 1+2, Pokémon Legend ZA, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, Kirby Air Riders, and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond all came out within 9 weeks of each other. And that dense lineup is really not that out of the ordinary. There's been several times where Nintendo puts out a handful of titles in just a 2-month span or a 9 to 10 week span at the end of the year. I really don't think we should be thinking it's going to be any different this time around either. Maybe it's a little less, maybe they have more substantial titles and 2 or 3 bigger titles, that's possible, but they're going to have multiple titles for the holidays. And with Pokemon not being there, that really has us wondering what those titles are going to be, because many of us assumed Pokemon would definitely be part of it, but it's not. So what could those titles be? The one that everyone's assuming, and I'm inclined to agree, I was already thinking it even with the assumption that Pokemon would be coming out this year, that's 3D Mario. You look at the history of things, the 40 years of Nintendo releasing consoles. If not by that first holiday, definitely by the second holiday, Nintendo has a brand new mainline Mario for their new next generation console. There's a long history of this consistently happening. I don't think it's going to change this time around. Some people say, oh, well, the Mario Odyssey team made Donkey Kong Bonanza. Well, yeah, a part of the Odyssey team did, but if you look at the credits, it's clear several key members that worked on Mario Odyssey were not involved. Also, there's no way Donkey Kong Bonanza is the only game the Odyssey team made in 9 years. That doesn't make sense. There has to be more. So, yes, very likely 3D Mario is not that far off. And with Pokemon now missing, and also a Mario Galaxy movie coming out in April, it makes even more sense for Nintendo to capitalize on this period to really push Mario, take advantage of the boosted marketing from the Mario movie from the 40th anniversary, have a big Mario game to come out early on for their new next generation console, something that actually showcases what Nintendo can do with the hardware, something we haven't really seen yet actually. We haven't seen Nintendo games taking real advantage of DLSS. Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza started off as Switch 1 titles, and Pokémon Winds Waves is not coming out until 2027. We need a Nintendo title that's taking advantage of the hardware, that's showcasing what the Switch 2 can really do. And now is the best possible time for it to happen. It makes so much sense. So yes, 3D Mario now feels more likely than ever to be the big holiday title. Now, if you've gone this far into the video, let me just quickly say that I have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you enjoy my videos and you haven't subscribed already, I would very much appreciate your subscription. But is that all there's going to be? No, I don't think that's all there's going to be. You think about what we know for this year. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book is coming out spring. Let's say that comes out in May. Splatoon Raiders. Splatoon games are typically summertime games. Maybe it comes out June. And then maybe Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave comes out in July. Then you have the Dust Bloods, maybe that's August. Rhythm Heaven, maybe that's September. And for the record, I actually can see a scenario where some of these games come out in the same month. There are things like that. There are many times that happens. It's not like Nintendo only releases one game per month. They actually usually publish more than 12 games per year. So there are going to be months where there's going to be 2 titles, sometimes 3 titles. Now, it's probably not going to be 2 major titles in a month. Like, I can see a scenario where Rhythm Heaven and the Dust Bloods come out in the same month because Rhythm Heaven's a very small title while the Dust Bloods is a huge title. But operating under the assumption that we get one Nintendo published title per month from what we know about, that still leaves 3 months for this year to be filled up by other Nintendo titles, and there's probably going to be more. As I stated, historically, we get more than 12 published titles per month, and we're going to see multiple months that have 2 or 3 titles from Nintendo. Main point here, though, is that there's going to be at least 3 more titles Nintendo's going to announce to come out this year. At least 3. I'm very confident at this point that 3D Mario is going to be part of it. I do not know that for a fact, but that's just what makes the most sense right now. And I think that alone is going to be huge. But when might they start revealing some of these games? Reminder, there was a rumor that we talked about that was for a Nintendo Direct happening in either February or March that would have a 3D Mario announcement and the next Monolith Soft title announcement. That's been the rumor. We talked about it multiple times. We talked about how February didn't seem likely, even though, according to Nash Weedle, is where the rumor came from, more of his sources were leaning towards February at the time, but he still had sources for March. March always made more sense, so I'm still waiting to see if that rumor is going to be proven true. I'm not saying it is true, but if we get a Direct in March and it shows off 3D Mario and the next Monolith Soft title, I would say the rumor is then true. Which actually brings me to another title that now makes even more sense to come out this year, this idea of the next title from Monolith Soft. You see, with the idea that Pokemon was coming out this year, me thinking that we'd be getting a 3D Mario, the next new generation of Pokemon, and what's coming next from Monolith Soft, that felt pretty unlikely. But with Pokemon now out of the picture, if this rumor is true where we're getting the next Monolith Soft project announced, then I actually find the idea of that making it out this year to be really agreeable. Now, some people might say, well, what if that Monolith Soft title was just the recently announced Switch 2 edition for Xenoblade Chronicles X? I really doubt it. That's a really small little thing. I don't consider that a project. That's just a minor enhancement to Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I'm happy about, but that's what it is. It's a $5 upgrade. That definitely did not take up very much development resources. And we've been talking about for years at this point, Project Legacy, the new IP that Monolith Soft had been hiring for many years, that was supposedly taking place in a medieval fantasy world. If this project is going to see the light of day, I call it Project Legacy based off all the Midori leaks, most of which have been proven true, so I'm led to believe this one will also be proven true. Is that the title that's going to be announced? And if so, will that be showing up later this year? Or are the rumors of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition going to be announced? I don't know, but that also could possibly fit into this year, I suppose. It would be surprising, but mainly because I think something like that would make more sense to come out next year for the 10th anniversary of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, the same way we got Xenoblade Chronicles X DE for its 10-year anniversary, and the same for Xenoblade Chronicles 1. But I'll take either project. Either one would have me happy, but the next big brand new thing, that getting announced and possibly coming out this year feels a lot more believable now. But you know, there's another project that I was definitely debating could even come out as early as last year. But with the way things have been going this year, and with what I think kind of needs to happen this year, I was thinking maybe we'd be waiting even longer for Luigi's Mansion 4. Next Level Games is well overdue. It makes sense to think that they would want to follow up the success of Luigi's Mansion 3 pretty early on for Switch 2, and so I feel pretty confident that Luigi's Mansion 4 is not that far off. We even heard a rumor from Stressful Nick that there's supposed to be like a Luigi's Mansion amiibo, so I'm trying to connect the dots here. It feels like Luigi's Mansion 4 is not that far off. Maybe that's a title that's now going to come out this year, since Pokemon is not coming out this year. A Luigi's Mansion 4 3D Mario 1-2 punch would be really cool. Some people might argue, oh, 2 Mario Universe titles for the holidays? That doesn't make much sense. Well, it makes plenty of sense actually, because they're 2 completely different games. That's like saying it doesn't make sense to put out Mario Kart World in June and Donkey Kong Bonanza in July. Technically, 2 Mario Universe series, but they made complete sense. It was one of the best 1-2 punches we've seen come out to start a generation from Nintendo. So seeing like Luigi's Mansion 4 in October and 3D Mario in November, that makes a lot of sense and would work really, really well. The Luigi's Mansion series has also been known to be a visual showcase for the hardware. We need some visual showcases. We need games to showcase what the Switch 2 can do from Nintendo. So Luigi's Mansion 4 3D Mario 1-2 punch would actually be so stellar, so huge. I think it makes a lot of sense. Now you might be wondering here, well, you were just talking about the next Monolith Soft title coming out, so what do you think? Do you think these are all coming out? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that a lot of these titles that we think could be ready, I was kind of operating under the assumption that we're not going to get all of them this year. Maybe a couple, but not all of them, especially with Pokemon coming out likely November. But now that that's not the case, because coming out 2027, at least one of these I have to think is going to be slotted into 2026. But then there's a whole other angle to this conversation that we haven't addressed yet, and that is the Zelda anniversary situation. We go back to the special Nick rumor about amiibos. He not only heard about Luigi's Mansion amiibo, but also Zelda amiibos, which, of course, also, if you're trying to connect the dots, that would suggest there are going to be some Zelda releases this year, which makes sense. It's the 40th anniversary. Some people are probably going to say, oh, well, the anniversary already passed, Nintendo said nothing. Yeah, as expected, actually. If they had a February Direct, maybe they would have said something, but if you look at history, as we've talked about consistently, they don't really focus on Zelda stuff until later into the year because they have Mario and Pokemon anniversary stuff to focus on first. But by summertime, we usually start to hear about a lot of Zelda plans in terms of anniversary stuff for the year, and so that's likely going to include some type of release. Some people are now starting to think, with Pokemon being gone, that we might be getting a more substantial Zelda release this year. And I think that is a possibility. It's a thought that crosses my mind. I'm not going to assume that, though. I actually think that's probably one of the lesser likely things for this year. I think Mario is going to take the big spotlight here. However, I still feel that similar to the 35th anniversary and the 30th anniversary and the 25th anniversary, Nintendo will want to showcase something ambitious Zelda for the future. They showcased that Zelda U tech demo back in 2011. They had a massive showcase for Breath of the Wild, first playable demos at the Great Plateau back in 2016, and they gave us a title reveal for Tears of the Kingdom in 2021. So I am inclined to think for the 40th anniversary, we're going to see some type of teaser for the future of 3D Zelda on Switch 2, but I don't think that's what's coming out this year. Of course, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Nintendo really does feel like they need that big 3D Zelda and big 3D Mario 1-2 punch for this second holiday of Switch 2. I don't believe it, but I'm at least admitting with Pokemon being absent, it does make a little bit more sense. I'm actually thinking we're going to get like maybe some sort of 2D Zelda offering and then the 3D Zelda tease. The 2D Zelda offering will come out this year and the 3D Zelda tease will be for this year, but will come out next year. That's my belief on how things are going to go, but that is just a prediction. I do not actually know. But with these titles in mind, they need to get announced soon, so it gets me excited for when Nintendo finally decides to have that General Direct showcase where they announce their big dogs for the holidays this year. Which, theoretically, we could be waiting as long as summer, but it really does feel like they need to say something sooner. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, you can use my code SLEEPRESTART when checking the link in the description below for the Manta Sleep Mask. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.